Just sign this document that will dock you 11 and a half hours. I'm a middle school teacher who speaks fluent Spanish, thanks to growing up in the West Valley. Go Suns! The fact that I'm bilingual has given me many opportunities, including one where a teacher in charge of an English language learner, ELL, important acronym for later, program, gave me the opportunity to tutor students twice weekly, plus an additional 15 minutes per every hour for prep time. Okay, cool. So, Mondays and Fridays, I punch in 15 minutes before 2:20 during my 7th hour prep, then punch out at 3:30 when the kids leave. No problem, right? Wrong. At the end of the year, I get an email saying I'm being docked 11 and a half hours that were punched in before the end of the day. I was livid. They claimed I'm getting paid double, but I looked through everything I signed off on and didn't remember seeing any restrictions on when I was to punch in for those hours. We met in the office and the district representative had me sign this document, and she showed me the contract I signed. Nowhere did it specify when I was to punch in those hours, and I brought this to both people's attention who was present. But Federal Action Plan, FAP, office lady persisted. Just sign it. You can't get paid double. Enter Malicious Compliance. I signed quickly, this time using my middle name. I happen to know the person at the district office, D.O. Savior, who will be reviewing this paperwork, and know that she'll either ask me what's up or to have me re-sign an obvious non-signature. Like clockwork, I got a phone call on my 7th hour prep from D.O. Savior. She asked why I signed like this and why I'm being docked. I explained my working with the 2 new students who don't speak any English all year, and even teaching them both English all year. I explained that no one said anything all year, and that I'd have made the adjustment to get paid those hours the entire school year. She says, "Wait a minute, you were on your prep time, right? And you're bilingual. Do you have a certificate?" All answers were yes. My next paycheck was $3,500 more than my standard paycheck, coming out of the FAP lady's budget for federal action plans. I was very confused at first. It appears that I can punch in during my contract hours, if it is on my scheduled prep. And because I have an ELL endorsement, I got this endorsement working with monolingual students in the West Valley, and my direct supervisor on campus doesn't, I get paid as an ELL leader on campus. Quite the stipend. So, what was supposed to be a $345 deduction in pay for me turned out to be 10 times greater, as a deduction from their department paid directly to me. So, looks like FAP lady's right. I can't get paid double, but it looks like I can get double quintuple paid. I think this story goes to show that if you know something's wrong, especially when it comes to money, don't just accept that and move on. It sounds simple, but a lot of people, including myself, might not have fought as hard as OP did. Wasn't made redundant like everyone else in the company, so kept showing up to work until the end to do nothing. This story is from June 2012, a week or so short of 10 years ago. I have generalized my exact work for anonymity. The story takes place in Australia, where we have very stringent laws around employment, firing, hiring, redundancies, maternity, etc., etc. A little bit of background. I had started working for this particular company in March of 2011. I was hired basically on the spot once I demonstrated my knowledge of the product that I would be working on. I even started 2 days later because of a deadline that had to be met. I had a very specific contract for what I did. I was thrown in the deep end, a sleepless 7 days followed, but by the end, I managed to do a decent job on the first of many products. 2 months after I started, my direct boss, general manager, was let go and not really replaced properly. A consultant took over their responsibilities. I should also add that the majority of operations were in Australia, while a smaller team operated in the UK, which is also where the CEO was based, despite 80 to 90% of products coming out of our office. Towards the third quarter of 2011, the CEO's contract ended and was not renewed, so the hunt began for a new CEO who was eventually found and began working also in the UK location. After a very busy 2011, hiring approximately 30 new employees and launching a bunch of new products, business was booming until the second week of January 2012. By this point, upper management couldn't stay on top of everything. The COO of the parent company was brought in to oversee operations in Australia, because we had a lot going on, but the CEO was based in the UK and new. At this point, we had a group meeting where we learned the future of the company, and that operations in Australia would cease on June 30th, 2012. The end of the financial year in Australia. This was followed by management explaining that everyone except a handful of people would be made redundant with payouts. The handful who would remain would instead be made redundant after finishing their projects at the end of 2012. So, over the next 5 months, as operations were slowly winding up and people started to exit the company, I'd lined up a few job interviews. One of these was my dream job. It was based in Europe in the exact field I wanted to be in. I kept this quiet, telling only a handful of my closest friends at my still current job. The recruitment process took quite a few weeks, many late-night Skype interviews, general chats, etc. It was a big job and a massive interview process. Towards the end of May, I'm still in the running for this dream job, and by this point, pretty much everyone knew, wishing me luck. Around comes the start of June, and everyone starts to get their redundancy letters, giving them 28 days of official notice outlining their pay schedules and all legal entitlements. When I say everyone, I mean everyone, except me. I find this very strange, but quickly realize it's because if I hand in my notice, I won't be entitled to a payout, and the company gets to save a few $1,000s. This is where my malicious compliance kicks in. I keep quiet and don't say anything. By about the second week of June, I find out that I didn't get my dream job, and I tell one other person, but make sure they don't tell anyone else. Fast forward to the last week of June, and now there's just 7 employees, including me, left in the office, alongside the GM, COO, and CFO. Everyone, except me, has packed up their desks, and at this point, just showing up to basically be social and reminisce. On the second to last day, I run into the COO. Remember, he was from the parent company, brought in to oversee the winding up of operations, next to my desk, and he goes, "You must be saddened that tomorrow is the last day." Casually, I respond with, "Oh, is it? I know it'll be quiet, but I didn't realize it's my last day." He takes a closer look at my desk, still not packed up, has the most confused look on his face, and responds with, "Yeah, it's everyone's last day. Why wouldn't it be your last?" "Oh, I never got a redundancy letter." At this point, I can see the expression on his face go from "huh" to "oh crap," in the hope that I would get a different job and resign so I don't get redundancy entitlements. Among everything else going on, between the GM, COO, and CFO, they forgot to issue me an official redundancy notice. At this point, he realizes all this and goes, "Oh, come and see me in my office in 30 minutes. Half an hour later, I go to his office. He's sitting there with the CFO by his side, but also kind of behind him. There are a few papers on the desk. I sit down, and he says, "Sorry we didn't do this properly at an earlier point, but here is all your redundancy paperwork." The first piece of paper is the official letter. I pick it up, start reading, and the first thing that catches my eye is the date. It has been backdated to 27 days previously. Now, this is a 2-copy letter that needs to be signed by both employer and employee. I put it down and go, "That's not today's date." He gets flustered and responds with, "Sorry, we forgot to get to you, but the notice was issued on that day." It might have been issued then, but this is the first I'm seeing of it, and you'll note it hasn't been signed by me. "Yes, but you did know this was coming." I did, but I assumed I'd be retained for longer because I wasn't given official notice. "What do you want us to do now?" "Put today's date on it, and I'll sign it." but legally we need to wrap up operations before the end of the month. We can't do that. You could try to fire me instead, but I don't think Fair Work Commission would be satisfied with your reason of me not wanting to sign a falsified redundancy letter. By this point, he's very flustered. Meanwhile, I'm just laughing my butt off in my head. Okay, let me change this for you. He disappears, comes back with another copy with the correct date. Okay, here you go. I'm not signing this yet. Why not? Well, I've got 28 more days of legal employment now, which means I'm owed a day extra and a bit in annual leave in my final pay schedule. He looks at the CFO, and the CFO looks at him and nods in agreement. He changes my payout schedule, adding another day of annual leave to it, prints it out, and hands it to me. I carefully look over everything. It's all in order now. I sign the paperwork, and we both get copies. So, what will you be doing here for the next 28 days? Nothing. I'm not coming back after today. But you are legally employed for another 4 weeks. We can't be paying you for nothing. You should help out the IT guy and pack up some boxes. There's nothing in my contract about packing up boxes, so I won't be doing that. Also, if you read my contract, it says I'm employed to work on this one specific project only. Any other work outside of this needs to be agreed on separately, and since you sold my project to the competition yesterday and is no longer at this company, I have no further contractual obligations to fulfill. By this point, the CFO is barely holding in his laughter. Well, that's not fair. We have to pay you an extra month for nothing. That's not my problem. My contractual obligations have been fulfilled. I'm going to pack up and go home at 5 p.m. Okay, please make sure it's not before 5 p.m. I get back to my desk and pack it up in less than 5 minutes, and put all my personal belongings in a box. Then I just sit around doing nothing. One of my colleagues, who was remaining for a few more months, comes over and asks, what was all that about? I explain everything in detail. He lets out the biggest booming laugh, goes to his office, closes the door, and continues laughing. 15 minutes later, the CFO comes over and goes, you don't have to stay until the end of the day. You can take off whenever you want. And this is the story of how I got an extra month's pay due to management's incompetence. I've got to give some real credit to the CFO for remaining calm that whole time. I was really expecting him to just blow up on OP, but I guess reasonable people do still exist. And I guess it wasn't necessarily his money at stake. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's stories, and I'll see you next time.